I'd like to introduce our key speaker for tonight, Ms. Guyana McCallum, who is an intellectual property lawyer here in Guyana. She has been providing profound service to individuals and corporate clients for the past 16 years. Guyana McCallum is the founder and managing attorney at the law firm McCallum and Co Legal Services, attorney at law, licensed trademark, patent, and copyright agents. McCallum and Co Legal Services, attorney at law, provides legal advice and presentation to clients and companies in the practice areas of business law, intellectual property rights law, and land law. I do hope that her informative message resonates with us as we push towards exposing the issue at hand and how we can become a part of the solution. Over to you, Yana. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Sade, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. I'm seeing some names that I know, so I just want to say quick hello before I start. I'm seeing Adler on the call, Linden Cave. Let me see who else. I said hello, I think, to Nicole earlier. I see Tula on, I see Tamika on. So for the persons that I know in the room, thank you so much for joining us. For the persons that I don't know, we'll get to know each other in a few minutes. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Just give me a minute. Let me put my screen so that you can see. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I want to give thanks to Sade and Fine Art UI for the awesome overview that she's given of the conversation today. I've decided to title the presentation Intellectual Property Law 101. I make no assumptions about who is in the room, so I'm assuming that we're all starting at a place of zero knowledge. If you have some knowledge on intellectual property law, I applaud you. If you have interest, I applaud you. But I am going to speak from the basis that we are learning this area together. So I want to give thanks to Sade. When Fine Art GUI was launched, I was one of the first responders, use that language, who got really excited about just this community and business for artists. And I told her, if there's any way that I can support the journey, let me know. And here we are today. So let's get started. As you heard, my name is Guyana McCallum, and I'm the attorney at law at McCallum and Company Legal Services. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to work with the technology here, and it looks like it's not working with me. So just give me a moment. Let me get set up. Right. So artists, welcome. I know you're in the room because you're an artist, but there are various forms of artistry. We're not just talking to visual artists today, but if you are a creative person in the room and in any way, shape, and form, you are creating some type of artistic good, whether as a web designer, a YouTuber, a fashion designer, a makeup artist, we're talking to you, as well as the fine artists and the visual artists in the room. So welcome to all the artists on the call. This presentation is for you, as I said, if you are an artist, you're an aspiring artist, or you're an advocate for creatives and artists, because Sade mentioned we're talking about what does the landscape need to look like to promote art and good artistry and wealth for artists in Guyana. That's a conversation we're going to have a little bit later on the call. So this is for you if you're an artist, an aspiring artist, or an advocate for creatives and artists. So we're going to use technology a little bit. I encourage you, if you do have your mobile, I'm praying that this works. You can go to slido.com. That's SLIDO.com, slido.com. And the code is 166517. I'm doing a quick poll to see who's in the room. Are you an artist, an aspiring artist, or an advocate for creatives? So slido.com. And the event code is 166517. Just it will take you less than 30 seconds to vote. Select which one you are so I know who's in the room. Slido.com. I'll put it in the chat. Right. So let me see if I can I have it on my phone here. 50% of the 10 people who have voted so far are artists. 40% are advocate for creatives, and we have 10% who are aspiring artists. And Christine says, could you please repeat the instructions? Okay, so you need to go to slido.com. I'll type that back into the chat again. Go to slido.com. The event code, when you go to slido.com, they'll ask you to input the event code 166517, and you just select who you are. Are you an artist, an aspiring artist, or an advocate for creatives? So Christine, just give me a thumbs up that you were able to get in, right? We've got 12 people who voted. Okay. So this gives us a good sense of the room. Thank you so much for voting. So we have so far with 12 people voting, and you can continue voting. I'll just take note as persons come in. We have 50% of the people in the room said they're artists. We just moved from 42 to 38%. So some of the advocates look like they dropped off. And then we have 8% of the people who are aspiring artists. So this is good. So we have a good mix of people in the room. So thank you for voting. So let me tell you a little bit about McCalman and Company Legal Services before we get started. So we're a boutique law firm. We were founded in 2014. Our niche area, as Sade mentioned, is intellectual property law, but we focus on 3 practice areas: intellectual property law, business law, and land law. We are on a mission to help small and medium-sized businesses protect their big ideas and monetize their brand with premium legal solutions that are customized to fit their business. I started this company, and this year we have expanded and we've become really clear on what our intentions are and how we wish to serve Guyana, the region, and the world. And our big idea at McCalman and Company is that Guyana has the next Caribbean billionaire brand. So if you are in the know, you will know that Guyana became the Caribbean's first billionaire. So there are billionaires living in the Caribbean, but she, I believe, is the first Caribbean born, bred billionaire. So we are on a mission to find Guyana's next Caribbean billionaire brand, if not brands. And if you want, I don't know how many persons know the song by Travis McCoy and Bruno Mars, I Want to Be a Billionaire So Bad. So if you want to be a billionaire, just type yes in the chat. We're going to have a conversation about building wealth. But if you want it, let me see how many people in the room aspire to be billionaires. I got 1 yes. Okay, that's good. 1 billionaire. All right, we found 1. We found 2. Right, excellent. Excellent. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I've talked about the company. Let me tell you a little bit about me. As you've heard, I'm been a legal practitioner for the last 16 years. I'm admitted to practice both here in Guyana and St. Kitts and Nevis. And I've been an entrepreneur for 7 years. So I'm not just a lawyer, I'm a lawyer who's an entrepreneur. I've been learning the business side of things. I have been learning the successes and the failures, how to work. I've been learning how to work smarter, not harder. So that's been a journey. And my passion project for 2022 is creating wealth for creatives. And I have a mantra. I just got this from a friend earlier this year, or late last year rather, that encapsulated just all that I am and that I stand for. It says, I will do all things well. Perfection is not the goal, excellence is. So my goal this afternoon is not to give you a perfect presentation, but to give you an excellent, what I desire, intend, hope to be an excellent presentation that we can all learn and share from. So what will you learn today? We're going to be talking about 1, the business value of intellectual property law, because there are many laws. These laws are very technical, all kinds of rules, but I think it's important if you are in the business of art or you're aspiring to be in the business of art, you need to know what is the value of intellectual property law, the value of copyright law to the artist, and I have collected what I call the 7 baby steps to start building wealth as a creative. So those are the 3 things that I hope that we will learn with each other today. So let's start with some bonuses. I really, really love bonuses. And because we're doing this via live, I'm a very interactive person. So you'll notice that I've been asking you to type in the chat because I want feedback. I want to hear from you. So if you like bonuses, type yes in the chat. Let me see how many people like bonuses, right? Excellent. Bonuses. We love bonuses. Bonuses are awesome. So I have 2 bonuses to share with you today. So bonus number 1 is to know the business value of intellectual property law. There is a course I taught some years ago called The Legal Fundamentals Every Entrepreneur Should Know. And essentially what I did was break down 7 essential legal areas that an entrepreneur needs to know. Not that they have to know that in detail. That is why you trust the experts. But you needed to have a sense of those laws because they help you in your business game. But you needed to be able to translate those laws into what it means for you and your business. So specifically today, one of those 7 fundamentals is intellectual property law. And specifically today, the business value of intellectual property for you if you are getting into the business of art, if you're already selling your art, is that you need to know how to protect your ideas and how to protect your brand. As an artist, all that you create began with an idea in your mind. And you need to know how to not just share that work with the world. That's the whole point of creating it. You want it to be shared, you want it to be valued, but you need to know how to market that, how to sell that as a brand. I'm really encouraging artists. I know we have the starving artist mode, and we'll talk about that a little later on in the presentation. But I really am wanting to encourage people to also become experts at what they do and brand it as a business. Make money from your talents. Don't just treat it as a hobby. Oh, this is something I like to do. But how do you translate this gift that you have, this gift that you've been given, into a business, into an opportunity that works for you? And intellectual property law is intended to teach you that, to teach you how to protect your ideas, how to protect your brand that you've created. Bonus number 2 is that you need to know your industry. So we're talking about the creative and cultural industry. UNESCO reports that the global creative economy doubled from $208 billion in 2002 to $509 billion in 2015. That's the value of the global creative economy. In the UK, the economic contribution of arts and culture in 2016 was reported by the Creative Industries Council, an Arts Council of England report, as £21.2 billion. This is in direct turnover, direct money from arts and cultural businesses, and created 137,250 jobs. I thought I would give you the global perspective, give you, UK perspective, given that we have a lot of connections to the UK historically. And unfortunately, the only country that we have sufficient data for in terms of the creative industries is currently in the Caribbean is Jamaica. There is some collection of data for our South American brothers and sisters in Brazil, but Caribbean-wise, in Jamaica, the creative industry contributes 5.1% of GDP. The employment contribution is 3%, and that's from the OAS studies 2004 and the World Intellectual Property Organization studies in 2006. Why am I telling you all these numbers? I'm telling you these numbers for 2 reasons. You need to know and understand, if you don't already, that the creative industry has value and it has worth and there is money to be made. Not that your only intention is about the money, but it's important that you understand the value of your industry, because if you understand the value of your industry, it also helps you understand your personal value that you are bringing to the industry, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of your creativity. So I want to applaud all the artists in the room. We have 47% according to the poll right now. I want to applaud each of you because while we don't have the data yet for Guyana, each of you are making a contribution to the creative industry in Guyana, and for that, you are to be applauded. So we've talked about knowing the business value of intellectual property law, and we've talked about knowing your industry. Let's check in because I have been sharing a lot of information. There will be a time for question and answers at the end, but I just wanted for us to take a moment to stop, breathe. You're on the call, hearing my voice, take a deep breath. And I want you to take a moment to do a quick introspection and ask yourself, what is the dollar value of your work as an artist? What is the dollar value of your work as an artist? Do you know your net worth? Do you know your net worth? I want to take a few moments for us to think about that. If you are an artist in Guyana, what is the dollar value of your work as an artist? Do you know your net worth? I'll pause for a moment, give you some time to think about that. If you know your net worth, I want you to type net worth in the chat. If you know your net worth, type net worth in the chat. And if you don't know your net worth yet, type not yet. So if you know your net worth, type net worth. And if you don't know it yet, type not yet. So I see a couple of not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Okay, not yet. So we're going to have a conversation about not yet because there's a lot of not yets in the chat. And it's important, like I said, if you're in the industry, we've just talked about globally what it's worth, what the numbers are in the UK. I saw somebody asking a question about what are the numbers in Jamaica. So that I'd have to do some research on to get the actual dollar value on. But we'll come to the questions at the end. But if you don't know your net worth yet, this is just a check-in. No shame, no blame, no guilt, no judgment. This is just to say, you need to know your net worth. You need to know it not just in terms of money, but what you bring to the industry. So I thank you and applaud you for your honesty, for all of those of you who responded, not yet. So we're going to talk about building wealth, but let's get into the meat. Intellectual property 101. This is the basics about intellectual property and intellectual property law in Guyana. What exactly is IP? So you'll hear in the legal jargon, people referring to IP. When they talk about IP, they're talking about intellectual property. It refers to creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs and symbols, names and images used in commerce, and that is according to the World Intellectual Property Organization. So intellectual property are creations of the mind. There are various types of intellectual property. IP includes copyright, which we'll talk about in a little bit, patents, trademarks, industrial designs, geographical indications. It can also include trade secrets. Now, why do we need IP law? What is the importance of IP law? According to WIPO, again, the World Intellectual Property Organization, IP is protected in law, for example, by patents, copyright, and trademarks, which enable people to earn recognition or financial benefit from what they invent or create. By striking the right balance between the interest of innovators and the wider public interest, the IP system aims to foster an environment in which creativity and innovation can flourish. So you'll note they talk about two things, recognition and financial benefit. So you need to begin to be asking yourself as an artist, as an aspiring artist, am I gaining recognition for my work? Am I earning financial benefit from my work? Those are important questions. The good thing about Fine Art GY is that Fine Art GY is deliberately created as a portal to do just that, to look at recognition for art in Guyana, as well as the financial benefit to artists. So what does the current IP law in Guyana look like? There are trademarks, That is governed by the Trademarks Act, Chapter 1901. It provides for registration of trademarks. It protects the registered proprietors from lawsuits for infringement and entitles the registered proprietor of that mark to also sue for infringement. It gives exclusive right to trademark in respect of goods registered. There are 34 classifications under which a mark may be registered in Guyana. A mark once registered is valid for 7 years and renewable for another 7 years. Currently in Guyana, however, there is no registration of service marks unless that mark was previously registered in UK. And you'll see as I continue talking, there's a lot of reference to the UK. I'll come back to that in a minute. Patents. We also have patent law in Guyana that's governed by the Patent and Designs Act, Chapter 903. It provides registration for the true and first inventor of a product. The patent is valid for 16 years, and there's provision for registration of UK patents in Guyana. So if you have a product and you can prove that you are the first person to invent this product, then you can have that covered under the laws currently in Guyana. So I don't want us to just think about the creatives in the room. I don't just want you to think about the visual arts. Think about the creative goods that you are producing. Then we have designs. This provides for the register of a new or original design not previously published in Guyana. 15 classifications of designs, including articles of wood, glass, printed, or woven design. The registered proprietor owns the copyright of that design for 5 years, and that may be extended for another 5 years. And there's provision for registration of UK designs. This is important for the fashion designers in the room. Expand yourself. Don't just think about creating clothing. Create a design and pay and have that design registered. Maybe you do a special kind of, I'll give you an example. She's not on the call and you can tell her that I called her name. So when you see Sonia Noel's work, there is a type of lattice work that Sonia does that as soon as you see it on clothing, you can immediately say, oh, that's a piece from Sonia Noel. If you are a fashion designer in the house, I want to encourage you. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole is pointing out that's renewable for a further 14. Thank you. So we'll get to that. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for that. So if you are a fashion designer in the house, I want you to think about how you can make your pieces uniquely yours and consider the possibility of registering a design. All right, so let's talk copyright. So the copyright law is currently under review. The existing legislation is pre-independence legislation, specifically the statutory instrument number 79 of 1966, the Copyright British Guyana Order, which provides for the application of certain provisions of the Copyright Act of 1956. It's important to note that the Copyright Act of 1956 was repealed by the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988 in the UK. So you'll note that the slide says current IP law because there is great need for changes in the IP law. The IP law is quite old, but the ordinance that we have now provides that a person is guilty of an offense if he knowingly makes for sale or hire any infringing copy of a work in which a copyright subsists, if he sells or lets for hire, for sale, any infringing copy of that work, distributes infringing copies of that work, trade or exhibits in any way infringing copy of the work, imports for sale any infringing copy of the work, or knowingly has in his possession a plate for the purpose of making infringing copies. So that's a lot of legal jargon and language, but this basically is talking to all of the people in Guyana, for example, without shaming them, that pirate CDs, that's a big issue. So you have Samuel Madas is doing his new album, Nation of Worshippers, and somebody will take that CD and instead of buying it from Samuel Madas, they decide to take it, put it in a CD burner, copy it, and resell it. That is a breach of the Copyright Act. Currently, we have issues now with social media where artists are posting their work online. And I know the photographers in the room, if there's any photographer here, people complain about this. People complain about this a lot. They will essentially take off the watermark from the photograph and then repost it as if it's their image. So I am very conscious because I'm an IP law, I'm very conscious when I'm posting online. So I do repost images, but I do my searches to ensure that those images are, first of all, if they're copyrighted, that I give credit, and also that I'm using images that are fair use images, basically that you are allowed, or also that I'm not profiting from those images. Because if I'm going to profit from somebody else's work, I need to get their permission and I need to credit them. That's a whole conversation we can have in the comments. But let's move on. I'm seeing comments in the chat. We'll take them at the end. Right. Let's put art copyright in a nutshell. So the main purpose of art copyright is threefold. It grants copyright to artists. It should allow you to license and sell your copyright and stop people from using your work, essentially protecting your work from copyright infringement. So basically stopping people from using your work without your permission. In summary, art copyright gives artists who have created fixed, tangible works a bundle of rights in those works. The rights provide both artistic protection and ensure that artists can profit from what they've made. After an artist creates a piece, they have the right to make copies of their work, distribute those copies, perform or display the work publicly, or make works that derive from the original. So if you're still with me, because we're getting down to the end, but if you're still with me, I want you to type in the chat art copyright. If you're still following me, type art copyright in the chat. All right, so I see Adla still with me, Tula still with me, Jessica still with me, Michaela, Sandra still with me, Fine RGY, Draylin, Christine, Dwayne, Ruel, thanks, good. So everybody's we're still with each other, art copyright. So I've just given you a quick, and it really is a quick overview because we have limited time today. I've given you a quick overview of what the current intellectual property landscape looks like in Guyana. And as you would have heard, if you haven't heard me say it directly already, there is urgent need for change of the IP landscape in Guyana for visual artists, for the whole industry, for everybody that is in the creative arts. I've given it some thought, and these are just my ideas you can share because I know there are advocates in the room as well. Apart from artists, there are also advocates in the room. You can share your ideas for what we need for change, but these are just some quick notes that I've made about the key steps for change in Guyana. Policy. First of all, we need to create a policy for the growth and development of the arts, creative, and cultural industry in Guyana. That needs to happen. I see Ruel is in the room, and I know Ruel has been working on this ad nauseum. So we need to have a conversation about what will be our policy for Guyana. Secondly, we also, I believe, need to create a clear policy for the future of intellectual property law in Guyana. So the entire area of law. So we need a policy for arts and creators, but we also need a policy for IP because what we have currently is quite dated. Secondly, legislation. There's a copyright bill that was done in 2015, I believe, that has been on the cards. Updating of the copyright legislation has been on the cards for years. That bill has not yet come into law. And we need to review that because, of course, 6 years has passed, changes would have been made, the landscape of the creative industry has changed. And we need, I would say, to pass new copyright legislation. At minimum, this is like low-hanging fruit within 2 to 3 years. If we are really committed and really serious about honoring our creatives, encouraging innovation, giving them an ecosystem that allows them to be creative, and as Shade was talking in the introduction, helping people to realize that beyond becoming a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, becoming an artist is valuable work, and actually you can be rewarded from the fruits of your labor. We need to pass, at minimum, copyright legislation. I also believe there's great need for data and public education. We need to educate artists and creatives on intellectual property law and best practices for their industry. We need to encourage use of copyright law. There is a big myth in Guyana that there is no copyright law, and I have been one I have been beating the drum essentially to clients, to friends that I've been talking to say there is copyright law in Guyana. It is archaic, it is old, it is in need of review, but there is copyright law that you can use currently. It just won't fit the digital social media age, but it is there in Guyana, and I'm encouraging you to use it. Reason why I'm encouraging people to use it is because we need to begin. I think it was Adler who asked a question about what is the dollar value in Jamaica. We need to begin collecting economic data on the dollar value of the arts, creative, and cultural industries in Guyana. We need to know what are the arts producing so that we can show people that beyond the aesthetic value of art, it actually is worth recognition and it is worth money. Because it is unfortunate at times, but we live in a world where lots of things, if not many things, if not all things, are measured in terms of money. So I believe if you give people a dollar value and you say, this is how much we have earned in performances, this is how many jobs the creative industries has created, then people begin to go, this is worth something. Because believe you me, those who are coming from the more developed industries, they know there is value in this. Jamaica knows there is value in this. Bob Marley's name lives on. There's a Bob Marley museum. Bob Marley has been dead for so many years, but his legacy lives on through the creative work that he created. And there is a dollar value to that. So I believe it's very important for us to begin to collect data. This issue of data is not one just for the creative industries, but there is generally in Guyana lack of data. But I believe the way we create the data is by actually using the current system. So we can have a record to say how many people are actually using the copyright legislation, how many people are aware of it, so that we can then make a case to our policymakers that people need this. So we need to use the system as it is, point out the gaps and the weaknesses, and essentially make a difference. So we've talked about transforming the IP landscape. We're coming down to the close. And I want to share just some collection of thoughts and ideas around baby steps for creating wealth as a creative. And if you're still with me and ready for that, could just type in the chat baby steps. So if you're ready for us to talk baby steps, let me just see you type in the chat baby steps. Baby steps. All right. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you, Adla. Thank you, Alicia. I see Sandra, Tula, Akima, Jamel. Thank you. Baby steps. So baby Latiana, Dwayne, thank you. So these are just a collection of my thoughts. You may have more. It's very important as a creative for you to get your mindset right. That's what I would share as tip number one. Choose a growth mindset. You are not a starving artist. I know there's that myth. Not a myth, there's that stereotype of the artist who struggles and has little to no money and they love the art and they're consumed by the art, but they have no real value to show for it. If you are a starving artist, learn how to change that. We talked about knowing your net worth earlier in the chat. Learn how to change that. Secondly, you need to mind the gaps. You need to know where you are mentally, emotionally, and financially as an artist. If you're going to shift where you are now to where you want to go, is art your business or your hobby? You need to decide. If it's your business, get serious about your business. If it's a hobby, then fine. That's the thing that, that allows you to just process your world and that you can share as a gift. But if it's your business, let's talk business. Number 3, watch your habits. You need to have a daily, weekly, monthly habits and routines that support you building wealth. Get organized. What's your daily routine? Are you writing a certain amount of pages every day? Are you creating a certain amount of new artistic work per month? Are you learning about the art? What are you basically doing to support you transforming your art and your gift into real wealth for you? So we talked about mindset, then money. It's really important, not just as artists, not just as creators, but all of us to get financially literate and learn the money fundamentals. Do you know the 7 cures for a lean purse? Have you read The Richest Man in Babylon? I read this book a few years ago, reread this book about 2 months ago, and it has completely shifted my life. One big tip, save 10% of everything you earn. So every income you get, save 10%. So learn the fundamentals of money. Number 5, be business savvy. Go legit. Register a business and work smarter, not harder. So many people are just doing this on a side, it's like a side hustle. Turn it into a genuine, legitimate business. Number 6, copyright and trademark your art. Create a brand. If you think about Rihanna and what she's done with Fenty and her music, essentially what she's done is that she's created a brand. Think of Bob Marley and the Bob Marley Museum and the t-shirts and the music that you see. Chronic sang this song, Likes, and he says, all of y'all trying to be artists, and Bob Marley is still number 1 on iTunes. So copyright, trademark your art, create a brand. Creativity. I believe it's important, not for any type of creative work that you do, to practice mastery. Do you have a plan to master your craft? Create a plan to master your craft. What's your learning plan? In order for you to earn more, you need to learn. I had a business coach who said you have to learn before you earn. So increase your ability to earn by learning more. Get qualified and certified in your area. So I want to say thank you for following along. This is a really important conversation that we're having this evening. And like I said, we're on a mission. If you want to join us, we're here to support Guyanese artists who want to break out of the starving artist mode, and we're here to support creatives to build wealth. Our goal this year, we're starting very simple. We're taking baby steps as well. 3 public education workshops. So thank you for coming in, because you've just helped us to hit one of our 3 public education workshops. And here's how you can help us and join the conversation. Like McCalman and Company Legal Services at Facebook. This is, I'm not gonna say shameless, this is a prideful plug. Like McCalman and Company Legal Services on Facebook. You can read and share Legal Mondays every Monday at 12 noon on Facebook. We post legal tips, information, and strategies concerning IP, business law, and land law. So those are useful. You can follow the page and follow that. And if you need support or you want to collaborate in any way, you can email us at maclegalgy@gmail.com. And with that, I want to say a big thank you for listening and for sharing and for being interactive and joining the chat. I'm just going to look back at the poll to see who's still on. So we have 47% artists, 29% creatives, and the number of aspiring artists has increased. So I am going to end here and open the floor, throw the mic right back to Sade, so the floor can be opened for questions, comments that you want to make. Thank you very much, Sade. Over to you.
Okay. I think you can put your contact information in the chat, so it'll be there. So if anybody wants to, connect with you from there.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
So much, Ayana, for that observing perspective on this topic. At this point, I'd like to open the floor to anyone who has questions or anything we would have discussed on, or Ayana has discussed on the topic of intellectual property in general. Before I open the floor, I do ask that persons keep their microphones muted while someone is speaking. One way we can do this is if you have a question, you can use your palm emoji in the chat, and I'll get to you in the order that it is in the chat. Please alert me if anything you would like to bring to the floor, and you can do that during the chat as well. I'd also like to ask that you please respect each other's views. Differences and perspectives are welcomed and supported in this space. Lastly, I'd ask that we conduct ourselves by not using any explicit language. And so the floor is now open for any questions that you may have. I believe during Ayana's presentation, there was one question. I'm not sure if you saw that, Ayana, by Michaela Barrow.
Yes, and I see Michaela has her hand up as well.
Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead, Michaela. Go ahead.
Hi, I had actually raised my hand to reiterate the question that I had asked earlier, which is there a reason that a proprietor has a limited time for ownership, specifically in designs? And is it also because, as you said before, that the laws are a bit archaic?
Okay, so I'm going to respectfully put Nicole on the spot to help me out because Nicole Prince, who's on the call, has a lot of knowledge in this area. But to answer your question directly, so generally IP rights and copyright rights are not infinite. The reason why they're usually given for periods of time, and that is to encourage people to create works. But the reason why they're not infinite for indefinite periods of time, of course, is to encourage further innovation. So if, for example, you were going to say somebody has created this published work and they own this copyright for infinity, it would mean that nobody else would have an opportunity to protect another innovative idea that they've created. So when we were talking in the presentation, you heard from WIPO, they said, there's this balance between the public interest that wants this information and also protecting the artists or the people who create the work. So that's the reason, that's my understanding of the reasoning behind the time, Michaela, that it's not intended to be infinite. So time periods are given to do the balance to ensure that there is innovation on one hand and recognition for work on the other hand, but also to create opportunities for new works to emerge.
Is that okay, Michaela?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So there is a question in the chat. I believe, Lindsay, would you like me to read this question to Ayana, or would you like to go ahead?
So she says, please read it.
Okay, sure. Okay, so she's saying, knowing that Guyana's Copyright Act is archaic, where can I find the steps to copyright my work? For example, a book, who or where do I go? And to what extent is my work protected? And is the protection limited to Guyana?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions. At least what I'm gonna try to take them, Alicia, I'm gonna try to take them one by one. So yes, as I've mentioned, the copyright laws are archaic, but they are still in force. So I've been encouraging clients, I've been encouraging friends, artists, creatives, use the copyright legislation as it is. It is old. It doesn't take into account digital work, for example, because as you heard, we're dealing with the Copyright Act of 1956. And interestingly enough, the Copyright Act of that time was innovative. So that's the reason why we passed legislation in 66 to have that apply to us. Where can you find steps to copyright your work? You can get in touch with an IP lawyer like myself. You can get in touch with the commercial registry that is responsible for copywriting work. Those would be two, or any IP lawyer that you are comfortable with. That would be the people to get in touch to help you copyright your work. And you said, for example, you want to do a book. Where do you go? So where do you go? First of all, create the work. Ensure that you have rights ownership of that work. And then the next step, like I said, is to copyright it in Guyana under the current laws that we have. To what extent is my work protected, and is this protection limited to Guyana? So under the current IP legislation that we have, when you copyright, the work is protected in Guyana. If you want to copyright your work elsewhere, you would then have to file for those trademark or copyright rights in the other jurisdiction. As I understand, there is a convention, which is slipping me at the moment, but I will do a quick research and come back with it. There is a convention under that is also overseen and managed by the World Intellectual Property Organization, where essentially countries have come together to offer protection across borders, where, for example, if you registered in one country, you'd be protected in the other. If somebody knows the treaty, they can type it in the chat, but I'll look it up and post it in the chat afterwards. But Guyana is not, as far as I can understand, as my knowledge goes, is not yet a signatory to that treaty. So essentially, if you're copywriting work here, the copyright is limited to Guyana. But what I have been encouraging friends and colleagues to do is to think bigger and bolder. The world is your oyster, as they say, and the world is your market. So I'll give you a practical example. I know a singer-songwriter in Guyana who is copywriting her songs in the US. She hasn't yet, she's now in the process of copywriting her music in Guyana, but she has copyrights in the US. So I would encourage you, if you have work, copyright it here for the local market so that it's protected and you can prove to the other intellectual property offices that you have rights here locally, and then just make the investment to copyright in the region, the particular markets that you want to enter, whether Jamaica, Trinidad, Suriname, then copyright in those particular markets so that you're also protected. But it has to do also, you have to begin to think of it from a business perspective, Alicia, to think, where do I want my work to be seen and to be known, and essentially create a legal plan for protecting it in those markets. I hope that answers your questions.
All right. Nazima Ragabir had her palm up. I'm not too sure if I know she was.
Yes, thanks, Shade. Thanks for that. Thank you, Ayana. In my long, not maybe long as some other people, but in my reasonably long career, there has been a lot of talk about updating the copyright legislation and all of that. What have we essentially lost out on? Given the fact that the laws are not updated, what would you say we have lost out on? And I see Ruel Johnson is here, who has had he's had a very key position in the past two governments. I don't know, Mr. Johnson, if you can give us an update where it is on the legislative agenda at all. I know you're not a legislator, but I just wanted to know in the crux of everything that's happening and how fast-paced things are going, where it is on the agenda. I know a lot of things would have overtaken, depends on who thinks what is important. So those are my two questions.
So I'll answer quickly about what we've lost and ask Ruel to jump in and to just give us an update, because I know he's done tremendous work in that area. Just off of the top of my head, I would say we've lost out on a lot of creativity. People are not wanting to come into the industry because they're not seeing adequate protection for their work. So I think we've lost a lot of people who are creative, who essentially hide their art because they're not motivated to share it because there's not adequate protection and there's not adequate reward. So I would say we've lost a lot of creativity. And being the business mogul that I'm learning to become, I would say we've also lost a lot of money. Guyana has a unique culture, being a Caribbean country that is in South America. Pepper pot is uniquely Guyanese. And we have not yet, apart from one person I saw, this is, if you are online, please go follow her. This is not, by no way, nobody's paying me. All the people that you hear me shouting out on the chat, they aren't paying me in any way. But follow Metam G. I forget her name now, but she writes a food blog called Metam G. And she just got highlighted by BuzzFeed. And I think the dish that she promoted was pepper pot. Now, let me give a quick illustration. Jamaica is known across the world. Jamaica as a brand is known. Its artists are known. And I think they don't always make a lot of money, but they do make money from the Jamaican brand and the fact that there's reggae, There is Jamaican arts, and I think we have a way to go in Guyana to do the same, to essentially add commercial value to our arts and artists and our creative industry. So to sum it up, I would say we've lost a lot of creative people who just have been demotivated. And we've also lost in real terms a lot of money because we have not invested in the arts. Alti, thank you, Nazima. Alti, follow Alti MetMG. Like Alti is just amazing. She does amazing work with the MetMG blog. So Ruel, help me out. Legislative update. Where are we? Mike.
Ruel, if you're speaking, you're muted.
So yeah. I'm in terms of where we are in terms of legislation, I'm glad we have Nicole on.
Yes.
She's the best person to say precisely where we are. And she has been, at least from when we engaged since 2016, the key person in the official infrastructure in government championing copyright. I could put you on the spot here.
Yeah, please put her on the spot.
Yeah. But last I knew, WIPO had promised some assistance, and they had provided at least the commitment of a technical team for us to, through the Attorney General's chambers, help update the legislation. I could more accurately say expand on what we've lost with regard to the absence of an updated copyright legislation. But there's several areas. One, rightfully so, and the irony, this is probably the least impactful area. The people who are creatives are disinclined to participate in the creative economy. The reality is that we don't have mass copywriting of local creative work, but that may be that sort of chicken egg situation that we don't have a strong enough creative economy here. What is unreported is that we suffer from potential penalties, both through international agreements, as well as the disinclination of certain companies to come to invest in, external companies to come to invest in copyright, creative related businesses here. And we only see we sort of see an incidental reflection of this when you see certain things like you can't access certain YouTube videos that you can go to Trinidad or the US to think. That's precisely because
there's no copyright.
We don't have a updated copyright legislation here. Certain Netflix shows are restricted from our area, but that has less to do with or benefiting from our creative work here. But it has an impact. Certain companies don't come here precisely because of but those have more to do with software, I believe, for example. But which is also technically part of the creative economy. In terms of where we go forward, I think yesterday the Minister of Culture, and I'm glad to see the Director of Culture on here, I think, announced that there's going to be a conference on culture in the first quarter of this year, and the primary thematic focus is going to be on the business of culture, and copyright legislation has to be a fundamental component of whatever conversation we're going to be having in that conversation. Finally, one of the things we have to address here has to be previous culture of political will. And Shadi, I guess the warning before about not using foul language probably applied exclusively to me. But
Not
it's
really.
been
But I'm glad you remember it.
yeah, but in the past you've had I think the sort of dubious argument that the reason that there's been sort of a foot dragging on updating copyright has to do with the moral issue of access to intellectual property as a third world thing. The textbooks issue is a prime example of that. Textbook piracy issue, the officially sanctioned textbook piracy issue. I don't think that argument is valid any longer, as we're talking about a petroleum-funded economy. So going forward, and I think that was the primary policy
reason
given for not updating copyright legislation. Once it is we have copyright and of course the broader IP issue fixed, they have tremendous belief in the creative sector in Guyana. Yesterday there was the awarding of the creative industry cultural industry cash grant, and having an opportunity to sort of see the people who were involved, etc. I think 1 and 2 of whom are here, including of course Shadi, the fine art. This is a no-brainer. This is investment in the creative industries with copyright. Updating the copyright legislation as a fundamental act of that is something that has to be done. Again, I'm glad Nazim is here to interrogate and bring that sort of cynicism of why it is that we have not progressed and what the official thing is. I won't speak on behalf of government exactly, except to say that consideration, the issue of copyright consideration, will have to be part of the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruel. Will I still hear from Nicole?
I just want to put on the record, good night, everyone. I'd like to first put on the record that I'm not here in a professional capacity. I was just here to listen and observe and see what I can learn from the fine arts community and to offer my support to Ayana, who I've known for some time. I'm happy to see you here, Ruel. It's been a long time. The question that was posited as to what we have lost out. Well, generally, we've lost a really good opportunity to offer a wide framework of protection for our citizens. And as a nation, we would want to offer, or we would want to be on the receiving side of protection for our intellectual property. And so looking at it from both spectrum, there is a loss and also there is a dying want and need for the community to be protected. I know there are regional bodies that offer protection for copyright work. At this point, I don't have the specific names, but I can do the research and pass them over to Ayan, and she can share it with you. If we just skip across to Barbados, I know there's a regional body that would offer protection for copyright, and some artists have actually registered with those centers, and that gives them some protection in the Caribbean, and obviously it would extend itself to other countries. So all is not lost regionally, and so that would be my little contribution as to what we've lost, and even in a state of losing, what we can still grab onto as a regional community. Thank you so much for that, Nicole. That's really solid points. Shade, I'm just pointing out, I see Lyndon has had his hand up for a while.
Yes. Right. Yeah, I've messaged him that directly. Lyndon Cave is one of the Guyanese creator of Guyanese board games. And I'm happy that he is signed in because nobody has mentioned anything about our board games and our culture that, you know, we can incorporate these novelties with like board games and so on. So Lyndon, over to you.
All right, good night to everybody. Just a quick question for I heard it mentioned to have work that you would have published, let's say in the realm of social media, if you put say a logo, a business logo out there with TM on it, then while you would not have necessarily have a trademark application, let's say an international trademark application, you have some level of protection in actually being able to successfully claim that this is your original work. Once you can prove that you would have been the first person to put it up out there, would you be able to speak at all?
So thank you for that, Lyndon, and kudos on all the work that you're doing to promote culture in Guyana through games. So I've noticed that people have been putting up TMs. Nicole can help me speak to this as well. So let me say it this way. So intellectual property legislation, the best way I've heard it say is that it protects people who act on their ideas, not the ideas themselves. So if you want to protect your idea, you have to act on it and use the legislation to protect that idea. So I would say while putting it out there in social media and putting TM on it shows that you are claiming rights to it in law. If you were to send a stop notice to somebody, they could ignore you because you don't have, at best, they could ignore you because you don't have a legally registered trademark or copyright to the work. And at worst, they could decide to actually take the work and trademark it for you. I'll give you a global example. So Facebook just changed its name to Meta. And I don't know how many of you are following, but when they wanted to change to Meta, somebody had already trademarked the name Meta. And it got resolved because Facebook got the name Meta. I will not make any assumptions about the dollar cost about resolving it, but essentially Facebook is now Meta, and that is an example. So I would encourage you, Lyndon, and our artists who are on the call, take the next step and protect your work. As Nicole is mentioning, protect it locally. I think it's important for us to start using the system so that we can say to our policymakers, we're using the system and it's deficient, but also go the extra mile and protect your work regionally. And if you're hoping to make global moves, protect your work globally as well. So don't just put it out on social media. Don't just say it's yours, but I would, and I'm not saying this just because I'm an IP lawyer, I'm just saying this because it makes business sense as well. Go the next step and actually invest in legally protecting your work. Trademark your logos, trademark your brands, copyright your works, your CD. Use the legislation, like I said, because when you use it as well, it helps the movers and shakers like Nicole, like Ruel. I see Tamika, who's our director of culture, is on to actually make the case that, look, people are using the system and they're complaining that the system is inadequate. So you can't say to us, oh, we don't need to change it because people are not using the system. So please use the system. Go the extra mile and protect your work. Get it legally protected, that is. I hope that answers your question, Linda.
It does answer my question. If I could just come back in quickly. So I started my business, that project in 2019. And I went through the time of investing in trying to understand the process and what protection was offered and all the rest of it. And I actually initiated an application. Sad to say, that was 2019. This is 2022. And I guess, the pandemic and everything else might have played a role. But, that process has not yet concluded in me receiving the necessary certification. Further to that, I'm mentioning it because not in an effort to knock the deeds and commercial registry in any way, but to sort of put my fellow creatives on alert. So when I actually did my application, I got a response saying that I couldn't get the trademark I was asking for. because there was a clash. Now, in the beginning of the presentation, and you were talking about classes. So there are different classes that, depending on what your work is, would fall into. Now, there was this situation where the mistake was made of thinking that my application was in the wrong class. So when I was written to say I can't have the trademark, it's because invariably the Deeds and Commercial Registry looked at the wrong class. My application was for a different class. So I actually, because I was researching it and I had the prior knowledge, I was able to write back to them now and say, look, I applied for this class, and the class that you're actually quoting here is the wrong class. So when we, went through the back and forth process, they're like, oh, right. So we can go ahead and try to process the application now. Having, but if I didn't have that prior knowledge, then I would have probably just walked away thinking I couldn't get my trademark, because the attorney was actually trying to convince me to change what I was doing once they told her. Because the what happened is the attorney that I used, he had never done something like that before for anybody, because not a lot of people really, go down the road of doing the process. And for the people that actually do, there's some established players that they usually go to. So he himself, when I was saying to him, look, they're making a mistake, he was like, no, they can't be making a mistake. They're the Deeds and Commercial Registry. And I went and got the information that I was quoting and give it to him. And it's on that he really went back to them and said, look, you guys need to relook at this. And so, we got over that hurdle.
Yeah. Lyndon, thank you for sharing that story. I think that's important for us to hear the hurdles and the challenges. And I would offer two quick responses to that. I think, Sade, it's definitely important. That story in itself is important for us to have continue the conversation. And we need to have another conversation so that we can talk specifically about, essentially, as an artist, depending on your work, what are the classifications? What do you need? For those of you who do have works, like I said, if you're interested, you can reach out to me. We can support you in getting that done. But I think it's important, like I said earlier, for us to do the public education, because many people don't know that there are classifications for the works. And actually, in the application, your attorney is required, as part, from my understanding, and Nicole could guide me here as well, you are required to say, using the NICE classification on the WIPO, which class of works you want your trademark to be done. And importantly, I actually encourage clients, before you do a trademark, you do a trademark search. So depending on the class that you have, you know specifically what class you want your trademark to be registered in. And you also do the search to make sure that nobody else has registered your mark before. So it's really important that you also choose somebody who knows what they're doing. This is not knocking the attorney who was assisting you, but it's really important for you to choose. A big part of why we're doing this as McCalman and Company is because there, as Lyndon is saying, there are established players in the game, and unfortunately, those established players are not always accessible to creatives because of the dollar cost involved. And our goal is, while we value our work and we want to be paid what we're worth, we're also making an effort to ensure that it's affordable. Is not the word that I want to use, because I think affordable is loaded language, but we want to ensure that you get quality advice at a cost that matches your budget. So I would say you don't have to come to me. This is not a plug for McCalman and Company, but I'm saying, in choosing your IP expert, make sure the person also knows the area, that they're not just, this is not the first time they're doing the application, they're not sure, because then that could cost you time and it could cost you money. You could wrongly classify your work, and then you go through a whole drama to get that rectified. So I know the registry itself has its own challenges, but just also saying, if you're going to do this as an artist, just learn the points from Lyndon's story as well. Do the work as he did to protect your work, but also make sure that you're getting quality support to support you in the application process. And I know Deeds and Commercial Registry, from my experience as an attorney, is super, super helpful. So, you can always get support there. But education, for me, that's my big takeaway from Lyndon's story as well, that education is so key.
All right, thank you. Before I add my little bit, is there anyone else that would like to add a question or make a comment?
Quickly, Shade, I just wanted to ask Guyana briefly the difference between patents, copyright, IP, some of the languages and terminologies that you have thrown around and what we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nicole, can you, before I jump in, I'm gonna put Nicole on the spot one more time. Can you help me out here? Nazima is asking, because this lady is one of the experts, if not the expert. So that's why we're calling her name and asking her, because it's also important for you to know who among us has the knowledge and the information, so you could also give them their flowers. So Nicole, please help. I will chime in at the end, but help Nazima and the other folks on the call. IP law, patents, design, copyright, what's the difference? We're throwing all this jargon around and we know what we're talking about, but break it down for us.
Nicole, are you, everybody, sorry, I'm not hearing Nicole. Tammy?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, as Ayana was saying earlier, IP is the umbrella title, it's the umbrella name. And under that umbrella, you find smaller subheads such as trademarks, patents, designs, and copyright. So the differences are, for a trademark, it is a brand of some sort or a label that accompanies a good or service that you're seeking to register. So everywhere you take that brand, you are taking that mark, that logo, and you're seeking to have your ownership rights attached, and from that, your protection. One of the ones I can put my hand on locally is the jingle we hear on the radio every day: extra energy, extra lemongrass, and so on and so forth. So from the time you hear that, you know that it is speaking about a particular brand. That's an example of a trademark. A patent, and I'm just going to give this in a very, in a 101 concept. I don't want to get too technical. So for a patent, it is the invention of something that has never been there before. That invention must be, it must be yours, it must be original, and it must be capable of transformation on a commercial sense. So you cannot make like a glass, and this is the only glass that can be made. It must be able to translate into many glass, thousands of glass. Or a patent can also be a build off of something that we had before. So perhaps you have the glass, and then we want to add something else to the glass, and that something else that is added could be patented. So it doesn't all have to be original. Then you have copyright, that is for literary, artistic works, books and magazines and dramas and silhouettes and things of that nature, like they used to in bold silhouette. Mm-hmm. And the other one, copyright, patents,
designs,
trademark, designs. Well, designs is one that seems to be shifting because like everything, it changes over time. That is something that is created just like very similar to a patent, but it falls in a number of classes as well. So whatever you're creating, perhaps you're creating a bench. In my experience, I've seen the creation of a special bed that could be folded and transported in a box. And then when you take it there, it could be opened out. And that was something that was done locally. And that can be whatever you put together, the screws, the boards that you cut together, that can be flat packed and then open out and screwed up a couple of times. That thing is a design. Okay, a very good example, like if you buy something from Quartz, you know, the TV stands and things like that, they come flat packed. And then you take it out and then you open it, boop, you have something to put your TV and whatever and so on and so forth. So that process and that thing that you have created is what we will refer to very often as a design. So those are the 4 categories. I don't know if I was of any help.
Yes,
at all to you,
Nicole,
Ms. Lima.
that is fantastic. Thank you very much. One last thing, Shadi. So, Nicole, I know Guyanese like to make up their own phrases and stuff like that. Cheese, please, was something initially started by one person, but it's now something that is being used all over. Can that be something?
Yeah.
Just explain the process with that particular thing for me.
Yeah, you know, when you sit on this side of the fence, right, you get the rare opportunity to see all the examples where people lose out on opportunities to protect themselves. And I heard one of our colleagues mention that the cost is prohibitive. Yes, it is. But then again, IP is a specialist area. And you want to choose an IP agent who is versatile in what they're doing. He also did mention that the person he had went to is not was their first time or their first experience. So all of that weighs in. But nonetheless, when you get that mark, that logo, that patent, whatever you get registered, it lasts for a lifetime with your renewal period of 7 and 14 years consecutively. So when you weigh the cost, the initial cost of registration versus what you will get over a lifetime, it really weighs out. So you have to really think about it in those sense and not think about the one-term thing. And like he also mentioned earlier, the issue with the TM being on the item but not registered. TM is really telling you that it's trademarked, but the law operates on first come, first serve. So even if you have TM and you didn't visit the registry and register it, you will not get the protection from the registry that you would have gotten automatically. Yes, you can go to court and argue on the basis of use that you've had it for some time and as such you're entitled to it. But then you would have lost time pursuing a lawsuit that will cost you so much more when you can do the simple thing of having a registration in the first place. So coming back to the cheese please example that was raised, if our Guyanese brother or sister, whoever it is that coined that word first, had done the registration, cheese please, in one of the classes that covers food and edibles, had done that registration, and he had submitted to the registry that, one, this is his coined word, and he had gotten a trademark for that particular coined word, then what he would have done is barred all others from using that or those 2 words for any sort of food combination. Of course, there are rules that govern the issuance of the trademark and so on, which we will not get into. But if he was granted registration in the first place, then he or she would have been the only person entitled to use those words for that particular kind of food.
Thanks for that, Nicole. I just want to jump in quickly and say, so hint, hint, cheese please is not registered. So maybe this is a business opportunity for somebody to register cheese please. That's one. And like Nicole said, you can stop others, but also I'm a collaborator at heart. So I always think in terms of how we can make it work for all of us. You also have an opportunity by creating the work. So for example, if you register cheese please, to say to everybody that wants to use cheese please, hear what? I'm going to register cheese please. I'm going to invest the money. And you just give me $10 to use cheese please. Everybody wins. Everybody gets cheese please, and you literally getting some cheese. So think about it, folks.
I don't want everybody to run away with what Ian is saying, because you have to be careful that if it has become generic, like fish and chips, then you really can't give it to any one person because it's now available for everybody.
For everyone, that's true. So that's a good point to say, if you have an original idea, make the investment and register it. And Nicole's point about weighing the investment. So I think this is where I talk about the mindset shift around money. I think it's important for us to move from cost to investment. So ask yourself, a lot of times we're making money decisions based on, oh, I can't afford this cost. But you have to ask yourself, what is the return? It's like going to school. Yes, you might spend $2 million getting a master's, and that's a cost, and it's expensive. But ask yourself, when I become the expert in this area, what is the return I'm getting? It's the same thing with your copyright, with your patent, with your designs. Let's talk about the trademark, for example. You pay for registration in 2022 for 7 years. It's renewable for 14 years. That's 21 years of protection at the same price, because essentially when you register, this is what they will tell you, the registry. Your filing fee is half, right, Nicole? Half the price of what you paid for 7 years. So essentially, you get 21 years of protection of your work at the price. So 2022, that's 2043. You still own this mark in 2043. You're making money off of it in 2043, but you had an investment. Essentially, what you invested was at the 2022 price. So please let us also, from a money mindset point of view, begin to shift from cost to investment. If you're going to buy something, own something, think about what is the return. It's anything, any money decision that you're making, ask yourself, if I invest $100,000, yes, it's a cost, but what is my return? And if your returns are going to give you more than your cost, are going to make or are going to give you back that cost 3-4 times over, by all means, make the investment. This is how we create wealth. We're talking about all the people who had typed they want to be billionaires in the chat. So I'm learning to get myself into billionaire mindset. And billionaires talk about their money makes money for them. So when Oprah invests and register all these trademarks, her and Rihanna are doing the same thing, right? They're essentially protecting their brand. So anybody that wants to use Fenty, that wants to use OWN, essentially that's money working for their money. So I want to end, I think that's a whole financial education conversation that we need to have. But just to hint it and encourage you to shift from thinking about cost to start thinking about your money decisions that you're making, whether around IP, whether it's in your business. Look at count the investment. Don't just simply count the cost. Because a lot of times people are also going to the person that tell them, I could do this for you for $10,000. And you end up wasting 6 months because you want to go to the JP down the road. This is without shame, blame, or guilt on anybody. You want to go to the JP down the road and pay $10,000 as opposed to paying $50,000 and getting proper quality advice. Think about the investment. Is it going to be worth it? Cheaper, especially in business, isn't always better. It really, you wouldn't go to a doctor who say he isn't qualified. Like, you would go to somebody's. Anyway, I think I've made my point, so I will get off my soapbox. Thank you, Sade.
You're welcome. I was just thinking on the JP price raise. I mean, I used, remember, $3,000. But so if I could bring the conversation back to more of artists and artistic work, if you know about, if some of the persons on the call, if you know what fine art does, fine art, we essentially practically market the artist's work and assist in their sales. So one of the challenges that I have had while starting up fine art was, the hesitancy of the artists not wanting to put their photography and their paintings and so on the website. So, but if you go to fineart.gy, no, what we did, or what the tech persons recommended, is that I have a no right click option, so you can't right click and copy and paste. And what I did as well, which I didn't want to do, because art for me, when you look at it, it has to resonate, it has to speak to you. And what I didn't want to do was to display those images at a low quality, especially photography and so on. So I had to end up doing that because we don't have that sort of protection for our artists. Mm-hmm. And if I could go back to what you said, Ayana, about us utilizing the copyright laws that Guyana has right now, and educating our artists on how to go about, with that process of protecting their work. Also, I was told that I can our artists can go about protecting their work through CARICOM at a $50 fee of 3 pieces. I'm not too sure of, I yet to research that, but I'm not too sure of how accurate that is. But that is one option if we don't, if we want to utilize the laws locally. There is the regional laws that we can utilize. Is Lyndon's hand up, Pam, again? Or is it, this is from before? Lyndon Cave?
Yes, my hand is up again, unfortunately.
That's fine.
So I just wanted to throw it out there that, from the perspective of young creatives or young entrepreneurs, you raise a big issue of money, Ayana. And I think that, yes, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, is that, probably if we had more opportunities from different places, like what the Ministry of Culture just did with the grant, then so persons have to make these financial decisions, and it's not a case where you don't want to go ahead and take a protection because you can see the long-term benefits of it, but it's weighing the cost of what do I use this little bit of money that I have, do I use it to go and pursue the process, and then I can't necessarily make the product, or do I go ahead and make the product so I can get some money to go through the process? So I don't know, maybe it's a kind of a chicken and egg kind of scenario, but I don't think it's a case where people don't want to do it, but a lot of times you just don't have the money.
Okay. So I think we should definitely continue that conversation, Lyndon, because like I said to Lyndon in the chat, I know the money factor. I come from very humble beginnings. I'm by no means yet, I'm saying it, a billionaire, and I want to be so that I could help to give money to the arts. And we have to find ways to collaborate. We have to find ways to work together, to work with each other, our experts, our creatives, so that we can essentially make, like I was saying to Lyndon in the chat, make this accessible. Because the reality is, if we do not protect our work as artists and as creatives, those who, Guyana is now open to the world. We are a petroleum producing country, and those who have the money will essentially come in, take the names, take the work, get it trademarked, and they will earn from it and we will lose. So I think while I'm saying I know money is an issue and it can be a prohibitive factor, I really want to encourage that and it's something that I'm taking note of so that I can think of a solution as well too, of how do we create funds, capital, so that people can protect their work, because it really is important. The more Guyana becomes open to the world, the more important it becomes for us to protect all the brilliant ideas that we have residing here. My real concern as an IP lawyer, just as a person, as a creative person as well, is that people will be taken advantage of, that they will essentially lose their work because they're either selling it for cheap to others who see the value in it and then turn around and make millions from it, or they just don't protect it at all. So I see Tamika has her hand up. So I'll stop there, but definitely a conversation, the money conversation has to continue. Thank you for raising that, Lyndon.
Yes, thank you, Lyndon. And yes, Tamika Boswain, the Director of Culture at the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport. And I am especially grateful to have you on this call, because I know that you are so much interested and in touch with our Guyanese culture, and you have a vast knowledge of our history. I admire this woman for this, and you'll know. Go ahead, Ms. Tamika Boswell.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Shade. I really admire you too. And Ayana, good evening to you. My question is for companies like Fine Art GY. I think you need to start setting standards for your membership, because I've seen where in countries where when you start putting products out there, the Chinese and everybody else come in, they copy the work and they mass produce and sell them. And if you can set standards like asking that your artists be at minimum register their work or have it copyrighted, that will start the process because it will encourage more people to become registered. And that once you set that bar, I think others will follow and you show them the benefits of it. If you make that a part of your organization's rules, I think that we'll get on the path where the majority of the artists will be able to register their work. As a side note, I have a concern for some of the works produced in Guyana. Authenticity and genuine Guyanese culture sometimes is absent. A lot of artists create pieces, but they're pieces that are of other cultures. I've been to a function where an ambassador was wearing a piece from Guyana, a piece of Tibisiri earrings, and they were of we call it dreamcatcher earrings, and I really loved them. What she said to me, cultural appropriation, eh? And she smiled, and I felt so embarrassed, right? Because we're selling work, but the work that we're selling is not necessarily the images is not necessarily ours, and the foreigners recognize it, and they don't take us seriously because of it. So that's the other side of the argument that we have to look at: originality and how we produce what we produce. Even in music, you find that an artists these days are ready to sing songs from foreign artists, and Guyanese don't know their music. We have to be more passionate about our local culture and our own work and be proud to sell it. When you meet a Jamaican, they tell you about Jamaica. They sell you Jamaica. The gifts they give you is all Jamaica. Everything is just culture and country. And so if we got to change our mindset and our attitude, this is just my 2 cents. Thank you.
I agree with that 100% because since starting up Fine Artists, well, the demand for the type of art as well, especially from our overseas art collectors, it's lacking because they have people that left Guyana years ago and they just want the authentic Guyanese art and the culture of Guyanese culture portrayed in the art, depicted in the art, and that is lacking. It's lacking in some cases, and we could only encourage the artists, like you said, Ms. Oswin, to give authentically Guyanese work. Thank you for that.
I just want to say as well, I want to support Sade and say thank you for those insights, Tamika. I think that's very insightful what you shared about authenticity, originality, and setting standards for artists, minimum standards, so that we come up higher, as they say. And I think what you said at the end sparked in my mind a conversation that we need to have about what it means to be Guyanese. I think it's something that we don't own as yet. We own others, like we own everything that's we seem to, I should say, let me not make a generalization that is foreign. I think if we're going to be creative in this industry and we want it to last, we also need to have a conversation about what does art from Guyana look like? What is Guyanese art? What do we want to share in the world that is unique, that is original, and that is truly authentic? And it's also a personal, ongoing conversation about essentially being yourself and being real. I've been having a conversation with a friend and I was saying, I came across this statement, being real is the new fake. We got to have conversations about being our authentic selves and then actually have our art and what we create move from that place. So I think it's an important conversation that you're raising around the issue of authenticity and originality.
If I may share in the chat, this bit that Dwayne Hackett has mentioned, for anyone who has missed this, just wanted to share that there is an interesting documentary on Netflix, The Lion's Share, on the copyright story of the lion Sleeps Tonight. The original creator of the melody not benefiting from his work, this is what it's about, discovering the injustice, his children taking Disney to court, etc., etc. So Dwayne has shared what we can do to, follow up on our education about copyright. Thank you, Dwayne.
I believe that Kwesi has a question.
Go ahead. Thank you. Who said it was Kwesi? Kwesi? Or
Sorry, I just saw his hand up in the chat, so I thought perhaps he had a question.
Okay. All right.
Hi, are you hearing me?
Yes, now we're hearing you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to make a point, kind of in keeping with what Ms. Boswin was saying. It's very important for us to look at what is called originality, especially coming out of Guyana, and authenticity. But one of the things we should look at is the fact that, we can't just look at what is happening now and say, okay, this is what we need to change. No, we also got to look back at the past and see what has created the problem or the issues that brought us to this point. Now, one of those problems which we, as Ayana rightfully pointed out, we would need to have discussions on is, for example, the use of what we call national songs, which are not really national songs. For example, the song from Woody Gauthier, which is This Land Is Our Land, which came out in 1945, which really had nothing to do with Guyana, but was plagiarized by Guyana. So we've got to look at those basic steps that happened in the past, because I think the culture, our culture was built on plagiarism. So we've got to break that particular culture through education. So it's right that we should start with the discussion of, what is Guyanese culture, on how we groom and foster that culture. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kwesi. Andrew, go ahead. Andrew Kendall.
Hi, Shade, and
hello,
everyone. You can hear me great? I just wanted to jump in, albeit a bit late, but I wanted to just bring up 2 points that I know Shade and I have discussed in the past, especially as it relates to the topic of artistic identity in Guyana, but also the need for more inherent awareness of Guyanese culture. And I think it's always very easy to, hold artists or artist-loving people up and say, we need to value, we need to take our work more seriously. We need to ask for our worth. We can't sell ourselves short. But I think it's really important for us to recognize the endemic issues that go beyond individual artists or practitioners, and recognizing the way that to be an artist or to be part of an artistic community in Guyana very often comes with an immediate sense of loss in a way. If you look around, it's important for us to recognize how issues of art intersect with issues like culture and sociology and politics. And thinking of when you look around the country as a young person coming up that has an interest in art, what is being valued? And very often it's not artistic stuff. I've taught high school, university, I've seen with my own eyes the ways that artistic work is devalued. And if we're going to ask persons that are practicing art to take pride in their art, we can't ask them to do that while on the other hand, devaluing their art everywhere around them. When you look around the important buildings in Guyana or the important people in Guyana, what are the kinds of work that they're valuing? And if somebody is coming up and wants to practice and is seeing their work undervalued, whether it's like I always tell my students, it's important to draw the line from the Caribbean currently with our traumatic history of colonization, slavery, and indentureship, because the line is one running through. And that historical lineage has purposefully and intentionally devalued art in this region. It has created a situation where we are living with this gap that we feel needs to be fulfilled by art from elsewhere. So when a European artist or an American artist include some ethnic stuff in their work, they get praised for that. But when a Caribbean artist tries to merge something else, it's like, oh, you know, we're not valuing our culture. And I'm not for or against either of those, but I think it's important to look at the distinguishing and recognize what we value as legitimate mixing of artistic types and what we see as not taking pride in your own work. You need to ask questions like, before the artist decides to sell their work and to sell their work, are they making bus fare tomorrow? Are they making the light bill tomorrow? Because those are legitimate questions. Who are the patrons supporting these people? Who are the people that are, so it's easy. I mean, it's easy for me to say as an academic, you know, I have my steady job to say, okay, you know, invest and then wait for the results, but that's not always a realistic option for people. And if we look around at when international countries fund academia in this part of the world, they're funding STEM, they're not funding culture. And I've always said to my students, because if you look at the superpower countries in the world, they're not becoming superpowers because of STEM only. They're becoming because of their music, because of their film, because of their art, because of their poetry. Those are the things that they're using to perform acts of new imperialism. And until we recognize, not we, me and you individually here, I mean, we're speaking to the choir here, the persons with the actual power, the persons with the cash, with the money, with the ability to create new rules and ways of living, until they recognize that and help us to help ourselves to be saved from that kind of overwhelming, you know, monolithic foreign version of culture, it is not enough for the individual artists to really pick up that mantle and do it for themselves. We have to support them. There need to be systems in place, because an individual artist on their own can only do so much if the entire society is one that does not engage. I mean, I hear that idea that, no, great art is made in struggle. Because any real artist knows that they're struggling to breathe, they don't have the ability to create great art. We shouldn't be asking our artists to struggle to create something beautiful from their pain. We should be tending to them like flowers in a garden and giving them all the soil and the water that they need to create the art. And they cannot do it on their own. It needs to be a system where we recognize what systems are lacking and we can see them and change that. Otherwise, asking artists to, you know, band the belly now for a possibility of the next couple of years is just not a realistic ask, I think. Thanks, Shadi.
Thank you, Andrew. Those are some excellent points. Thank you. And we're coming down to closing time. Is there anyone else would like to make a quick point or comment or question? All right. So this conversation would have given us insight into some truly noteworthy perspectives. And I'm sure we would have all gotten something to dwell on as we were educated in our powers as it relates to what we're able to achieve with the current policies in place and what we hope to achieve later on with the reform. With this said, I'd like to thank Ms. Ayana for taking the time out to be here with us this evening, educating us on this very important topic, important to each and every creative here in Guyana. I'm also grateful for everyone who have contributed and who, even those who have tuned in on this workshop and just listened in. My heartfelt gratitude to you all, and I do hope that this conversation continues to grow and blossom into action and more scrutiny in protecting the creativity of our talented Guyanese creatives and artists. And I'm going to shamelessly say as well, like Ayana, please go to the fine art page and like the page so it will, you know, eventually support our artists in some way. And, leave a comment, go on your respective social media pages if you want to, if you've gained anything from this evening's presentation and workshop, mention fineart.gy. Thank you very, very much. And I will stop the recording and that being said, thank you and pleasant good evening to you all. I will stop the recording now.